Hi, I'm David Goforth with the Cooperative Extension Successful Gardener. Today I'm out here at Marty Bradford's Greenhouse and Garden Center to talk about fertilizers. You will see several fertilizers he's got on the shelf out here, and I think this is a good place to buy fertilizer material from a reputable person rather than some of the advertisements that I see online. There are things out there that are a waste of money, quite honestly, and I want to share with you a little bit about what's essential, what you might need to buy, and what is just marketing hype and a waste of money. And to do that, the first thing I want to do is discuss exactly what is essential for a plant. To do that, I've developed a model here because molecules are a little bit too small for us to see, and so I've developed this model and I'll show you what exactly is essential. First of all, I've represented the soil that we have around here as a sheet of silicon. Most of our soil here is made up of sheets of silicon, and that's what I've got right here. This silicon, by being a huge lattice network of silicon, it will sort of develop some negative charges here. And most of our fertilizer elements are positive charges. There's a couple of exceptions, but the positively charged fertilizer will hold to the clay and will be there available for the plant. So there are, you read in the references, either 16, 17, or 18 essential elements, and I'll discuss exactly where the discrepancy comes in. I consider them to be 18 essential elements out there, but scientists are still arguing about a couple of them. Here's some that we're sure of, though, is the carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. The carbon comes from the air in the form of carbon dioxide, and another method that carbon can come from the air. And oxygen comes both from carbon dioxide and from H2O or water, so it gets in the plant. As long as you're getting air and water, you're getting these right here. The only reason to purchase some carbon-based material is for the soil. It can help improve the disease resistance of plants if you've got carbon-based products in the soil. So I'm going to set those over to the side, but there are essential elements. Now, the next ones I want to talk about are what we call macronutrients. Macro because they're used in large quantities. The major ones in plants is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. We may have up to 4% of our plant may be nitrogen, for example. So maybe less depending on what part of the plant we're talking about, but nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. The nitrogen is sort of mobile. It doesn't really stick to these things right here. It's in the soil. These right here, potassium and phosphorus, will stick to our soil and it'll be there for us. We've also got some secondary macronutrients used in fairly large quantities, not quite as much as the potassium or the phosphorus, but they're still used there some. We normally get the magnesium and the calcium from lime. In fact, our soils normally contain a lot of magnesium anyway, but if it needs magnesium, we're getting that from lime. If it needs calcium, we're getting that from lime. We're normally putting the lime out there for pH reasons, and the calcium also has some physical reasons we might be putting it out there. But those plants will actually need these here to grow and develop and have a normal lifespan. They also need sulfur. Typically, we've got enough sulfur in our soils, so you generally do not have to worry about the sulfur for the plant to have enough sulfur. Now, we've got another set here that we call the micronutrients because they're used at very small levels. In fact, something like boron may make up 1 part per million of the plant. For all the other molecules that you've got in there, you may only have 1 molecule of boron for every million molecules of other things. But these are the ones right here: zinc, copper, iron, boron, manganese, molybdenum, chlorine, nickel, and cobalt. Now here's where your discrepancies start coming in with these two right here. The cobalt, some people say it's not essential, it's just beneficial. Other scientists are saying essential, and of course anything that's written within the last 20 years may reflect one or the other of those thoughts right there. Nickel is used in very small quantities. There's just actually one enzyme that contains 1 molecule of nickel as necessary for viable seed. So even if you could totally take the nickel out of the system, you could have a plant that would grow and flower and fruit and have a seed. It's just the seed would not be viable. So it's obvious that we don't need a lot of this. In fact, these over here, the boron, iron, copper, and zinc are the only ones that you would really worry about purchasing if you're worrying in the soil. If you're growing in hydroponics, you may have to pick up a couple other things, but again, this is sort of what we look at in the micronutrients in specific situations. I'll mention a couple of other things. Silicon, I've seen that listed as an essential element. It's really not. Sometimes silicon is needed for a normal plant. If you're familiar with horsetail, it might grow on the ground if it didn't have silicon, but there's plenty of silicon out there. I mean, our soil is basically silicon based. And then sodium, some people say they need sodium, the plants need sodium to manage their osmotic pressure, and other people say if there's not sodium, they would use something else to manage it. But some people say it's beneficial, some people say it's not. We're not worried about it either way. We really don't have to worry about those right there because we've got plenty of them around anyway. So let me try to recap right here. What you see right here is the only molecules that you are worried about. When you see advertisement, they're saying we're selling 17 or 18 different micronutrients, or they're selling 41 different micronutrients. You're wasting your money for everything beyond what's represented right here on the table. Now let me talk about a few of these specific instances. Boron, for example, the only time I've seen boron short was one time in Cabarrus County soils. It only requires 1 part per million, but this soil did not have that much, and so boron became very beneficial. The thing is, I would not routinely add boron because too much boron is way worse than, almost worse than not enough. Too much boron will keep things from germinating, so you got to be very careful with that. Iron, sometimes we see iron deficiency in plants, but that relates to pH more so than it does iron, or to the plant being dormant or something like that. There's reasons to use iron. I'll discuss a few of them when we look at the bag of iron. Copper, again, I've seen one soil that was questionable on copper, so it's something we normally don't worry about. Zinc does make a little bit of sense in some cases for us to take, put zinc on pecan trees, for example. Pecan trees use zinc quite a bit and can grow real funny if they don't have enough zinc. So that's the main place that I'll use zinc. We normally wouldn't use that on our vegetable garden, for example. So when you get right down to it, the main ones you need to purchase are the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Let's go take a look at some of these specific bags, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here's some fertilizer products, and fairly easy to tote. This is a little 4-pound bag here, so just about anybody can pick that up. You'll pay a little bit more for a small quantity, but this will again do the job. On every fertilizer bag you will see 3 numbers, a something dash something dash something. In case this one's 8, 10, 8. The first number is for nitrogen, which we normally always get a response out of nitrogen. Nitrogen is very mobile in our soils. It'll leach out of our soils, and our soils really can't produce enough nitrogen on their own to get the maximum plant production. So we normally get a response out of nitrogen. The phosphorus will hold in our soils, but a lot of times we want to add phosphorus. In this case, we're adding a little bit more phosphorus than we are nitrogen, and the same way potassium. So this would be sort of even all the way across, and that would work good. Sometimes I have people say, well, should I use a 20-20-20 or 17-17-17 or an 8-8-8? And that's sort of like asking, is it big bunches of bananas or little bunches of bananas? Using the little bunches, the little numbers, you would add more of it, and the plant wouldn't know the difference. It would be the same for the plant. So this would be a good general purpose fertilizer to use here. Now, this product right here, we flip it over and we'll notice that it's got relatively more nitrogen, a little less phosphorus and potassium, but still a good number across there, particularly if you've got plenty of phosphorus in your soil. This is one of the expensive components of fertilizer. This is one of the reasons the price is going up, and so doing a soil test to see if you actually need phosphorus in your soil is very worthwhile. But in addition to that, you'll see some of these things down here. For example, this one's got boron, copper, iron, manganese, and zinc. All these are essential, all these are useful, and where a person might use this is like on a container garden where you've got, you don't have as much soil, and so you may need some of the manganese. If we've got soils around here, we've got plenty of manganese in it, but if we've got a container or something, we might use something like this that contains a little bit of manganese for that, yes, for that purpose there. Now, looking on over here, we've got what's called an all-purpose fertilizer. This could be used for vegetable gardens or ornamentals, as could any of the ones we've looked at. Again, a balance across here, so pretty much the similar to what we've all looked at for garden fertilizer here, but again in a small convenient package like this. Now, we go up here, you've got one that is got iron on it, and you'll see this is iron sulfur, which generally we've got plenty of iron in our soil, but sometimes either because the plant is not picking it up or because our soil conditions, the pH may be too high, or the plant's dormant, we're not getting enough iron up into the plant. And so that's when you might use something like this to green it up a little bit. But typically we would not use this on our vegetable garden, for example, because we've got plenty of iron and sulfur there. Now, sulfur may be a little bit short in some of our sandy soils that have been heavily cropped in recent years, but not likely. So the other thing we can use for sulfur, and this is the sulfur that I use it here, this is actually for a fungicide, but I'll also use this to adjust the pH in the soil. I prefer this over the aluminum sulfate, which Marty's also got aluminum sulfate on the shelf, but the sulfur is beneficial to the plants. It will adjust the pH. Aluminum sulfate would also adjust the pH, but we don't need any more aluminum in our soils, and so that's why I prefer to use this sulfur right here. And looks like it's the same price. This may do a little bit better job on that. The next one here is our zinc, and we may use zinc for things like pecan trees that need zinc, and some other reasons that you may have a little bit of zinc in some of your different situations. That's what this is for. And again, on a pecan tree, I wouldn't necessarily use it every year, but a couple of years in the life of a pecan tree, putting some zinc out there makes a lot of sense. And I will mention this one right here. This is bone meal, which bone meal is a pretty good source of phosphorus. Not the only source of phosphorus, but a good source of phosphorus. 0, 10, 0. So no nitrogen, no potassium, just phosphorus. And a lot of our soils here are short on phosphorus when we get started. And this is one way of bumping up your phosphorus right here. So again, you're not seeing a lot of hype here on various things that you don't need. These are the kind of products that are very useful as fertilizer. Let's look at a couple of the bigger bags that he's got out front and look at the numbers on them. Here we've got one of the turf fertilizers, a 1906. The high nitrogen rate here will give you a real good green up, and hopefully if you've got enough phosphorus in your soil and potassium in your soil, you'll get a good plant growth with that one right there. If you've not done a soil test, we normally recommend a ratio of about 4:1:3. So something like a 12:4:9 would be a good turf ratio if you didn't have a soil test. But if you've got a soil test, you've got plenty of phosphorus, plenty of potassium, this would work real well here. The thing is, this has got a pesticide in it, so you definitely wouldn't want to use something like this or anything with a pesticide on a vegetable garden, for example. So be careful about that. You actually would have to pay extra for the pesticide. That's the reason the price is increased here. But it's a good way of getting it out there just at one time. You're putting out fertilizer and pesticides during the right time of the year. So that's the purpose of something like this. Here is more of a straightforward fertilizer. This is 18-24-12. And so if you're soil tested low in phosphorus and then medium in potassium, this would be a good product here. And again, these numbers are not real critical that you remember 18-24-12. Other numbers will work. It's not rocket science. It's not precision engineering. It's just getting some phosphorus out there, getting some potassium out there. The plant will grow when you've done that. Again, the numbers from the state soil test, 0 to 25 index is low, and 25 to 50 is a high index for the soil test. And so something here that was reading low could use more of this phosphorus right here. Here's another product. And again, this is 40-pound bags. It's going to cost you a little bit more, but less per unit weight. A little bit harder to pick up, perhaps, for some individuals, and maybe more than you would necessarily want. But this product right here is holly tone. They also have just a plant tone, which does not form quite as much acid as the holly tone, but both of them are good products to use. Generally, the plant tone would be preferable for things that you're not trying to, that don't need acid, things like that are not azaleas or rhododendrons. So this is natural from different types of poultry waste and things that are actually it's considered organic, and certain certifiers will accept this in organic programs. Depends on the certifier. And so it's a slow release. It's got a lower number in it. When you're actually looking for the number on this one, have to search around a little bit. But we've got a 434. So it's balanced. You would have to use a little bit more of this than you would something else. Now, when we get to some of the organic ones like this, this is a mushroom compost. assume that has grown mushrooms at one time, and when it's finished with that, they bag it and sell it as compost. You look here, you get the numbers half, and 0.2%. So the decimal is very important in here. I've seen sometimes where I've thought some of the brands, and not any that I should point out down here, but some of the brands in some stores are sort of trying to hide the fact this is a 0.5. And they make it sort of like a 5.52 when it's actually a 0.5, 0.5, and 0.2. This individual has done it very clearly here, showing that you've got a very low rate of nitrogen, phosphorus, and even a lower rate of potassium. But that's good because you use more of this. And this has got some carbon-based product in it that's going to give you some benefits within your soil. The benefits of better drainage, better water holding capacity, better nutrient holding capacity, and the disease suppression that I talked about with the carbon-based products in your soil. Here's another local product, again a little bit stronger because it comes from the chicken compost, but they rate this one at 1.5, 1.0, and 1.5. So this is a blend, again, to give you some of the organic matter, but will also give you some of the nutrients that you need in the soil. Hopefully with what I've told you today, you will be able to make better decisions on your fertilizer. Fertilizer is going to become more expensive. Some of the nitrogen is actually fossil fuel based, and of course it takes fossil fuel to get these products to the garden center for you to purchase them. So they're going to become more expensive as fuel costs go up, but if you'll make wise decisions, they can be very good decisions and give you a return in your vegetable garden or in your ornamentals. If you have any questions on fertilizers, you can give me a call at the office. And until next time, plan and plant for a better world.